Hello, my amazing Algebra Half students. This is Mrs. A, and I love math. And today we're doing lesson 122 in addition 2, which is only lesson 96 in addition 3. So if you're in addition 3, I am sorry because we should have done that a while ago, but it's hard to coordinate both books. So hopefully you got it on your own. And we're doing multiple term equations. So sometimes we have equations that might look like this. We only have one variable though. So we have an x, and then we have a constant, we have an x, and another x, and then a constant. So this is not as hard as it looks. What we need to do is combine all of our like terms first. So we have a 4x and a 3x and a 2x. Okay, so we have to figure out how to combine those together, and then we'll get all of our constants together, and then we'll solve. Okay, so we have a positive 4x and a positive 3x and a negative 2x. So 4 plus 3 is 7, minus the 2 is 5. So we wind up with 5x. I let that sit open too long, didn't I? And 5x plus the 2, because we only want to do one step for each time, equals 12. I think that purple marker is about gone. Okay, so then now we've got the 5x and the 2, but we want the 2 gone. We want to get the x by itself on one side. So we're going to subtract the 2 and subtract the 2 from the other side. Remember, only like terms may be added or subtracted. So since that's a constant and that's a constant, we subtract the 2 from both sides. 5x, this goes out, plus 2 and negative 2 equals 12 minus 2 is 10. We're closer, and it looks much simpler now, doesn't it? So 5 times x is 10, but we just want x. So we're going to divide both sides by 5. And the 5's will cancel, leaving us with x equals 10 divided by 5, which is 2. So x is 2. And we have solved our equation. So we could always go back into the original equation and put in the x equals 2, or we could kind of go intermittent step and just say, okay, if I did the 4 and the 3 and the negative 2, the 5x plus 2 equals 12. Let's just plug the 2 back in there. It's a little bit faster. So we plug in the 2, we get 10 plus 2 is 12, and we checked it. Here's our next example. Again, we have one variable, x, but we have some constants in there too. So let's get everything as simplified as we can, and then we'll start worrying about adding and subtracting to get our variable by itself. 3x and a negative x and a negative 4x are all on one side. So let's add those together. 3x minus x is 2x. 2x take away a 4x is a negative 2x. Then minus the constant 2 equals 5x plus 12. Okay, so then here we could either get our variable on the right or the left. I'm going to go ahead and put my variable on the right because then it will be a positive number, and that's just a little bit easier. So I'm going to add a 2x and add a 2x. Remember, don't try to do too many things at one time. This cancels out. Negative 2 comes down, and then 7x plus 12. Okay, so now I need one more thing to get the x term by itself. So since I have a plus 12 that's bothering my 7x, and I want to get my 7x by itself, I'm going to subtract a 12 and subtract a 12 from the other side. Now, what do we have left? This becomes a negative 14. Negative 14 equals 7x, and my 12 and my negative 12 cancel out. So now I have 7x is negative 14, but I only want x, not 7x, so I'm going to divide by 7 and divide by 7 on both sides. And then I get x equals negative 14 divided by a positive 7. Negative divided by a positive is negative 2. So I don't like to see my x on the right, so I just turn it around. X is negative 2. So we could go back up in the front and check it, or we could say, let's be really careful and make sure that this one is correct. And let's plug it in there. So x is negative 2 goes here, and x is negative 2 goes here. And on the left-hand side, I get a 4, take away 2 is 2. And on the right-hand side, I get a negative 10 plus 2 is 2. So I get 2 on both sides, therefore it is correct. Here's your first practice problem. So I want you to copy it down very carefully. And then I want you to pause your video. And then come back, work it, and come back and see if you got it right. Okay, so here we're going to get all of the x's together on one side. So 4x plus 3x minus x. So 4 plus 3 is 7. Take away 1 is 6x plus 5 on the left-hand side. And then a negative 7x minus 8 on the right-hand side. So now we want to get all of our x's on one side first. So I'm going to go ahead and add a 7x and add a 7x to both sides. So now I have a 13x plus a 5 equals, we can cancel this one out, a minus 8. And now we're trying to get the x by itself, the x term by itself first. So we're going to subtract the 5 that is over there with it. And then we're going to get 13x, cancel out the 5 and the negative 5, equals negative 13. Wow, that's pretty easy, isn't it? So now all I have to do is divide both sides by 13, divide by 13, divide by 13, and I'm going to get x equals negative 1. And x equals negative 1 is the correct answer. But just to check, let's go back here. And I'm going to check it, make sure that looks right. That does. I'm going to plug in a negative 1 here. And that's going to give me a negative 6 plus a 5 would be a negative 1 on the left-hand side. And then a negative 1 here would be a negative 7 times a negative 1 is a positive 7 minus 1 is a negative 1 on that side. And since I got a negative 1 on both sides, it is correct. Now we'll be back with our last practice. Here is our last practice problem. So copy it down and pause your video. Okay, this is the same type of problem. We're going to gather together our x terms on one side and get this side all simplified. So we have 12x plus an 8x is a 20x. Take away 3 is a 17x. Minus the 7 equals a negative 5x plus the 15. So now let's get our x's together first. Since we have a 17x over here, let's just go ahead and add a 5x and add a 5x over here. That's going to give us a 22x minus the 7 equals 15. So now to get our 22x by itself, we'll add a 7 and we'll add a 7 on this side. So now we have 22x, this cancels out, is 22. So if 22x equals 22, then we divide by 22 on both sides, and we get x equals 1. Well, let's just mentally check that back again. Okay, so we'll even plug it in back up here because it's so easy. 12 times 1 is just 12, minus 7 is 5, plus 8, which is 13, take away 3 is 10. So we end up with 10 on this side. And then over here, we get a negative 5 times 1, which is negative 5. Plus 15 is 10. We get a 10 on each side. Therefore, it is correct, and 1 is your correct answer. And we are done with lesson 122. And this is Mrs. A, and may God bless your day.